Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Unacademy, the one stop destination for the civil services English medium aspirants. Welcome to an initiative called Ethics Simplified. We meet every single week in order to discuss underlying ethical issues associated with current affairs. We are here to discuss a case study. Please note that the nature of the exam is significantly changing. In GS paper 4, there are case studies associated with current affairs or derived from the themes of current affairs as well. That's exactly what we are here to do as well. We have formulated certain case studies that can be useful, or the same themes can be repeated in 2026 GS paper 4. Therefore, let's begin and discuss these. Before we do, an important announcement. We are launching our special classes festival, and therefore you can learn from all of us free of cost, absolutely, on the platform on these dates, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of November. You can also get an insight about how the preparation is done on the Unacademy platform. These classes will be a true reflection of how we conduct our sessions in the paid courses as well. So, therefore, you can use this also for a very good trial basis. Please note these are the timetables for the coming days. On the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, these are the topics, the timings, and the educators that will be hosting these classes. Today, in fact, Sarmat sir at 6:30 p.m. will be taking up the topic of reservation system in India. So make sure that you tune in also on the platform and make good use of these. Now, let's begin with our first case study and understand why this case study is important. Let's start reading it and then I will discuss the current linkage as well. During a major religious congregation at Bhakti Dham temple in a northern Indian town, a stampede occurred when an unexpected surge of devotees tried to enter the premises during a ritual. Over 90 people died, including women and children, and hundreds were injured. Let's break it down at least from here. The first part is that there is a religious congregation or ceremony. That means the first thing that we have, and this is how you have to start building. While you're reading the case study, start thinking and at least making keywords about what all is given in the case study for you to ponder on. So, the first thing that is absolutely given is that it is a mass gathering. And in this mass gathering, plus there is a religious nature of this mass gathering. That means it is a religious mass gathering as well, the first thing that we know. In this mass gathering, there was a stampede that occurred. There was an unexpected surge of the number of people who were coming to do their faith or rituals in that particular area. And therefore, during the ritual, over 90 people died, including some vulnerable sections as well. And a lot of them were injured. So, along with this, the second thing that we absolutely know is that there is a case, there is a tragedy that has happened, a stampede that has happened, and in that there are casualties and there are also vulnerable sections that were impacted. The preliminary reports, that means the initial reports. Now, please remember the word preliminary. That means everything is not for certain as of now, but whatever has come to light initially has revealed that the local administration had issued the permits. The number of people who were allowed were only 50,000, but over 2 lakh people had arrived. That means a huge mismatch between what the local administration, so local administration becomes one of your stakeholders who had given the permit for 50,000 people, but it was 2 lakh people who turned up for this event. There was poor coordination with other stakeholders. Now other stakeholders also come into the picture. That means the police who had to manage the law and order situation there, the district administration that had to oversee all operations in that regions, and also the temple authorities, the temple trust, etc., who were also managing the temple entry as well. So there were multiple stakeholders. So one is the local administration district, one is the police for law and order responsibility, and the other is temple authorities as well. And what has come to light is that these three had not coordinated well in order to manage the situation. Look at the next set of problems. The emergency medical response was delayed. That means, even if such a tragedy had occurred, there should have been proper emergency medical care ready at all times and also strategically placed. But here also there is a delay. So, another set of stakeholders that you can probably write about is the hospitals or the arrangement for medical care that have to be there at all times. A senior minister, a senior minister or wherever you are posted, privately has advised Himanshu, you are Himanshu, the district magistrate, to manage the narrative. Now, what does this simply means? Managing the narrative means you should not you should not disclose facts that can make people critical of the fault lines of the administration, that basically showcases the administration or the district authorities or the government of the day in a poor light that could not manage the situation. The idea was to ensure that the blame does not come directly on the government trying to manage this. So, a senior minister has privately, please note, not in writing, not in public language discourse or communication, but privately has advised you to manage the narrative. That means avoid any excessive criticism of the government until and unless the elections are concluded, implying in other ways to you that you should only disclose selective facts and not the entire details of how this occurred, why this occurred, and who is at fault. So, this is the situation at hand for Himanshu, who was posted as the district magistrate in that area. Identify and discuss the major. Now, what you need to do is we need to identify the major ethical issues involved in this. One issue is associated with religious freedom, while the other issue is associated with managing for public order, etc., etc., and other issues associated with the values that Himanshu must showcase at that time. How can public servants handle political pressure? The one call, secretly, the private call from a senior minister. And media trials ethically. The media would be continuously blaming the failure of the administration, etc. So, how do you balance that you disclose relevant information in order to uphold transparency for the people and also ensure that that information is not twisted by the media to sensationalize the issue more? Suggest systematic measures that could prevent such tragedies. That means what more can be done, what will you do, and what more can be done to ensure that these kind of stampedes, events, and tragedies do not occur in the future. So, now this was the case study. Now, one of the best ways to, as I had discussed earlier, one of the best ways to introduce a case study is to think about parallel current affairs based linkages. For instance, there were multiple stampede events that were reported from different parts of the country. Whether it is the Royal Challengers Bangalore's IPL win celebrations, whether it was the meeting or the rally in Karur or the Karur district. So, the Karur incident, the RCB incident, and many other such incidents have highlighted that stampede or public crowd management is a big issue for Indian administration. So, how do you ensure that the crowd also have their right to access these areas and also manage this crowd to ensure that it does not become a public order situation? So, this kind of a aspect is something that has to be reflected in your introductions. The RCB linkage, the first way to think about introduction. The Karur district linkage, the second way to think about the introduction, and broadly suggesting that for a country as populous as India, any kind of crowd management related activities become a constant priority for local administration to handle. So, connected to population, connected to recent incidents, and talk about how this is a challenge. So, let's look at the introduction. You can talk about the recent Hathras case or the Karur incidents, as I have mentioned, even the RCB incident. They expose that crowd control failures or crowd control management failures are the case. Then you say, for a country as populous as India, these tragedies relating to Stampede are rising, or they raise certain ethical questions for administrators. How to ensure that citizens' right, now the right to gather or the right to freely move around under Article 19, under Article 21, is to be preserved, but at the same time, that their right to gather and worship is to be preserved, but at the same time, it is important to also manage public safety. So, therefore, you have to create proper mechanisms, proper queues, proper entry and exit options to ensure that this balance is retained at all times. Please also note, you can also write in the introduction about the VIP culture. The VIP culture when it comes to these places of worship or these public places which can be accessed. In fact, so many times because of the VIP cultures and different lines and queues for them, the space that is provided for other common citizens is often restricted. So, this is also something that you can mention in the introduction as well. That means you can say, when it comes to the access to a place of worship, there should not be recognition of any kind of inequalities in the society. Everyone, at least at the doorstep of God, should be treated in the same way and not probably use their powers as well. That can be a little bit of a poetic introduction as well in talking about today's time. Now let's read about the ethical issues associated with this situation for Himanshu, who is the district magistrate. The first situation is truth versus political pressure. That means there was a secret phone call that was made, a request that was made, and therefore, yes, in these kind of situations, you will say that the bureaucracy or administration is to be governed by the government or the democratically government elected government of the day. Absolutely, yes. But they are to listen to the government, or for in this case, the minister. These are democratically elected individuals. So it is very important that the minister and the government basically gives the direction to the administration, and they are supposed to implement the schemes of the government or the ministers. Simply take up implementation role. But in this case, the directive is not related to the implementation of a scheme. The directive is not related to maybe a new program, policy, guidelines, etc. It is a private and secretive request, or maybe a secretive order that is given to you as the part of the administrative machinery. You are the permanent executive, they are the temporary executive, and this is how the government works. But in cases like these, when the demand is unjustified, when the demand is not according to the law of the land, when the demand goes against the ideals of constitutional morality, you must, as a part of the administration, know that you are not just a person who is a yes man of the government. In case of illegitimate demands and the demands that you think go against the public order at large or public welfare at large, your true responsibility or your true loyalty lies with the constitution of the country and finally the people of the country. That means public service. And that is why you will write this in these ethical issues. You'll say that yes, there is political pressure, but it is important for Himanshu to not bow down to it and absolutely stand tall in ensuring that truth is upheld or integrity is showcased. So, yes, there is an ethical dilemma whether to reveal the administrative lapses, the failure of the administration. And please note, it takes a lot to own up, it takes a lot of courage to own up to your own mistakes. So, in this case, it is also very important for Himanshu to showcase courage of conviction as well. The courage of conviction is that you are absolutely sure that I will not bow down to any kind of issues. If we are at fault, we will come out in the open and accept our failures, our lapses, our loopholes. The conviction to say that yes, if we do not accept our faults, they are only set to repeat in the future. So yes, one part is whether to reveal the failures, their own lapses truthfully, or protect the institutional image. This is a very, very big problem in Indian administration. The administration often has their own set of checks and balances, and those set of checks and balances often do not work because the hierarchy or the top leaders are also preventing the mistakes or protecting the mistakes of the lower orders. And therefore, we say that there is often a tendency to hush up the topic or bury the topic because of maintaining the public perception relating to the institution. So that should not be the case. In fact, transparency beyond a point will ensure that the public respects your decision a lot more the next time. They do not have a perception of opaqueness. They do not have doubts. They do not have the perception of confusion. But rather, they know, they trust the administration, and that builds in India what is called as the social capital, or bridging the gap of trust between the administration and the people. So that's the first issue that you will talk about. The second is duty versus emotion. That means, on the one hand, yes, you need to cater to two things. One, you have to objectively understand how this crisis happened. Were people at fault? Were the administration tried to stop but the people did not listen? Were the other factors, for example, the temple authorities, lax in maintaining the situation? Did police not ensure the entryways or the law and order situation? What were the factors? So, this kind of an analysis requires you to showcase the quality of objectivity, noting down facts, understanding causes, and therefore coming to a decision of how crisis management should be done in the future. But the other side that is also to be showcased at this moment is not just about mere standing there and objectively taking note of everything is happening, but it is also about the emotional. Now, this is what I say, always use your theory topics in order to answer the case study. Emotional intelligence is a topic that we do in the theory portions, but here we use it and you say Himanshu needs to display emotional intelligence. Why? To understand what the families of those victims have gone through and what they want to hear at the moment. Probably at the moment, they do not want to get answers about who is responsible. They just want to be treated with empathy, the ability to step into their shoes and know what they are feeling. Their world probably changed. Imagine a person coming for a pilgrimage or for basically their devotion to a temple and going back without one of their near or dear ones. That's a very, very tragic event, and that is why it's very important for Himanshu to ensure that the empathy towards the victims is communicated. He is probably comforting the families as well and doing anything, going much beyond the objective stock taking situation or exercise. So, duty versus emotion both have to be displayed together, and that's the balance that is an important challenge. Next ethical issue is accountability versus blame game. The same aspect where you say that Himanshu must take accountability, be responsible of who is to be blamed for the situation that occurred, and not take up the blame game exercise that he is instructed privately or in fact even pressurized to do so. In this case, you will always say, it is not for a civil servant to fear promotion, to fear transfers. Transfers, even if he's transferred, even if he does not listen to what is the request of the minister, he can politely ask the minister to ensure that any kind of request is given to him in official communication. Why? Because official communication is often used while accountability is sought. So you can request the minister to say the same thing in the official communication. Of course, he or she will not do so. And at the same time, stand by what you believe in and not fear. If you are getting into civil services, why fear the transfers? This is part of your job. So therefore, accountability is to be upheld even at the cost of any kind of disadvantage that comes for Himanshu. Okay, next, religious freedom versus safety. Now, one of the major issues is that if you try to stop people in India, they often see the administration in a very negative light, and they feel that our religious freedom is being restricted, it is being denied. But at the same time, a one person's religious freedom can also jeopardize the safety of millions and millions of people. So, therefore, some religious freedom or access to religious places should also be restricted. This balance is very important. So, the balancing act between religious freedom and also enforcement of crowd control measures is the challenging bit. The next, of course, the same is institutional reputation. The reputation of the institution, that they are not at fault, they were absolutely spot on in what they did. But at the same time, upholding the value of justice. Justice would mean that fairly do not have any conflict of interest. Conflict of interest means the influence you have as a member of the same institution to vote or basically decide in favor of the institution. So therefore the idea is to ensure that fairly taking up responsibility and making sure that you decide who is at fault. The second part of justice is also to ensure that whoever's problem it is. One second, there is a lag. Yes. So the second part is to ensure that whoever is at fault and whichever stakeholders are the victims, for example, in this case also the vulnerable sections, they have to be given their due justice. Whoever is at fault should be punished after due assessment is made. So this becomes a part of institutional reputation versus justice. Another important aspect is what can the person do? That means what should he do in order to balance the request made and also the other part of maintaining the proper dignity of office. So therefore, in this case, you can say the idea is to uphold truth and transparency. That means if you want the people to trust the administration later, the idea is not to dig up or not to hush up the topics, not to bury the responsibility, not to evade responsibility, but rather to uphold truth and transparency. In fact, one of the best judge of a civil servant's character or integrity is that he sticks to the same course of action even when things are tough, even when situations are not favorable. Because it is very easy for people to uphold truth and transparency in good times, in easier times. The true test of integrity is that you continue to do what you believe, what you think, and what you preach, even in the most difficult times. So, the idea is uphold transparency and truth, communicate the verified facts promptly and honestly. That means basically the idea is to communicate exactly what is coming out in the investigation reports. The idea is not to conceal anything, the idea is not to hype anything. You will also say that this is very important because in the media segment, the lesser or sometimes if your silence can also be interpreted in order to start rumors, in order to start problems. So therefore, reduce the scope of rumors altogether and therefore communicate exactly what is coming out in the investigation to the media personnel as well. The second, as we had discussed, is adhering to constitutional morality. Now, this I have taken up from previous year questions as well. Use UPSC's questions in order to write your case studies as well. In this case, constitutional morality means, basic morality basically means what is right and wrong is to be decided by maybe religion, by culture, by traditions, by your socialization process. Constitutional morality means what is right and wrong is to be decided by the values enshrined in the constitution. And this is the type of morality that must be upheld by a civil servant at all times. The idea is not to make answers or give the right answers, what is wanting to be heard, to their political masters, but rather to the law of the land and the citizens of the people. So, in that context, if your decision aligns with the idea, if your decision is associated with the idea that the values of public service will only be adhered if you do true justice to it, that decision should be taken up. Any kind of decision that goes against public service, that creates a kind of risk for the coming days where a similar tragedy can occur, that should be absolutely avoided. The next is use institutional mechanisms. Use institutional mechanisms and refer sensitive decisions to committee or inquiry boards. That means you should also set up. Why should you be the only person judging and taking a decision? You should probably set up a committee of multiple experts, and this committee, together with multiple experts relating to crowd management, temple authorities, entry and exit plan, they should take up these decisions on a vote kind of a basis. So, committees or inquiry boards are very important to understand the fairness in the procedure. Why are other members also required? Because, for instance, if you are the only person taking the judgment of who is responsible, there can be a perception in the public that you will be favoring your own institution. And that creates a perception of conflict of interest. So, include more members, take up proper procedures, and then look at accountability setting processes. So, committee becomes your another example that you will write. Engage media responsibly. The idea is to ensure that you provide transparency without compromising investigation. As we had already discussed, whenever you do not divulge information, that creates the scope for rumors to begin. So, the engagement with media, as and when the committee has taken a decision, is proceeding with certain aspects and also retaining that information whenever you don't have to. That kind of a balance is also very important. But there are some things that you have to do immediately. For example, as a civil servant, you have to be ethical, you have to be empathetic, and you have to ensure that you have to treat the victim's family with a lot of care. They may be also angry with the administration, so there might be some form of anger. Dealing with that anger sensitively becomes the first part. Pacifying them and making them understand that you truly are understanding the pain is relating to them, showcasing emotional intelligence. And the third part is to basically conveying to them that we totally understand that no lives lost can ever be compensated with a monetary amount. But yet, some form of monetary amount is offered by the government as well. Considering if one of the victims that probably you have lost was the sole bread earner of the family. So, providing immediate relief, for example, this can also be counseling services as well. So, counseling services can also be utilized in order to understand that any family member going through significant amount of trauma is pacified a little bit. Emotional intelligence has to be displayed. The compassion, the empathetic abilities have to be displayed to ensure that you relate to their suffering and you take up this process, which does not look like you are violating their dignity. It does not look like you're merely compensating for the life that is lost. In fact, in most of these situations, when the administration is engaging with the families of the victims often criticize the administration and say that, is this a way to buy us out? Do you think that my husband's or father's or child's life can ever be compensated for whatever monetary amount that you give? So the ability to convey this is also a very important challenge where you can relate. You need to ensure that a time-bound inquiry. Why time-bound? Because justice delayed is often considered justice denied. So therefore, you will ensure that a time-bound inquiry looks into what were the safety lapses and crowd management failures. Who decided the entry and exit plan? Who implemented the entry and exit plan? Was some some condition laid out? Why were the passes, that means for only 50,000 people, why were they violated? So all these questions have to be made and the answers have to be sought to understand this. Another part of this is to understand that as an administration, whatever has happened probably has happened. But if you do not learn from the history, you're only set to repeat the same mistakes. So the idea is to ensure that you take, in fact, the administration should take this as a case study, in fact, an unfortunate case study, and learn from this to be absolutely certain, cautious, and foolproof in any kind of new, whenever no new incidents can happen. So the idea is draw long-term plans for future, taking into consideration this. For example, multiple entry and exit options should be planned. Volunteers, that means volunteers who are basically telling the crowd which lane or which queue to be followed. Volunteers that are recognizing any kind of close situation that is happening. Constant vigilance using CCTV cameras to understand wherever crowd is not dispersing. Other aspects also, for example, fans, immediate health volunteers that can probably provide the first aid even before the reaching of the emergency response vans. Whenever these kind of religious congregations are happening in India, for example, even the Kumbh Mela was a very big congregation. For example, when people are going to the shrine of Vaishno Devi, becomes a very big religious congregation, etc., etc. So in these cases, the administration needs to ensure that strategically at very good choke points or in a frequent distance, emergency response teams, for example, ambulances, etc., are stationed in order to reduce the number of casualties as well. We can also ensure usage of new age technology. Always write a technology point in today's case studies. It showcases your ability to use technology for today's day to day problems. And you can say the permit system, that means how many people are allowed. That permit system should dedicatedly be done online. That means an internet based ticketing system where, for example, 50,000 passes were issued. Those 50,000 passes can be scanned at the entry door to ensure that only 50,000 devotees can be entering the temple. So, this kind of technology can be used as well. Again, as one of the factors that was written in the case study was the lack of coordination. Whenever there is a lack of coordination, it is very easy to shift the blame. The temple authorities will say, we wanted to enforce, but the police allowed for a lot of people to enter from the entry gates. The local administration will say, we were only to give permission for the routes. The rest was to be taken care by the temple authorities. So it is very easy to shift the blame as well. What we require for these incidents are a dedicated coordination committee for the future. So the idea is police, temple authorities, event managers and local administrations have to come together for these kind of incidents to ensure that it is absolutely foolproof. Because think about it. Who will go to those families and tell them that it was not our problem, it was their fault? Do you think it really matters to them? A life once lost is lost forever. Does not matter what we do in a post-mortem kind of an analysis. Everything is much later. It does not matter. People will not come back. So this unfortunate event should basically create a strict guideline where these kind of agencies or different entities, their proper work should be mapped. There should be a clear checklist, and there should also be a dedicated body or a board that is overseeing the implementation together. That becomes one of the solutions that you will write. Other solutions can also be promote the use of CCTV. Drones, for example, drones can be associated with managing and looking at spots where there is a lot of crowd. AI based crowd analytics, that means what are the days, for example, some days are also considered very auspicious in India of the week associated with certain deities. And therefore, AI based prediction models can say that on these days we need more volunteers, and probably on these days we do not need so much protection. So, this becomes another way that you will say. Mock drills are to be conducted. For example, temple and authorities should often do these mock drills to see if the volunteers and the emergency care, they are ready for any kind of events that happens or not. It is being absolutely certain before to prevent anything later. And last but not the least, we need to communicate effectively in order to ensure that we are sensitive enough to not be an administration that is absolutely mum in times like these. So that becomes a important aspect. Now, when we have to write the conclusion, one of the best conclusions that you have to write or that you can utilize is, as I had discussed, integrity with you. The truest test of your character or the truest test of a person's integrity or a person's courage is to basically see how they are going to stand tall or bow down in the crisis situations. In normal situations, everyone probably is said to be at their best. They will put their best foot forward. But it is in times like these, in crisis times, that a proper administration's character is checked. So, crisis management is the truest test of public ethics. In moments of chaos, an administrator's integrity and calm become the real moral compass. What do you mean by the moral compass? A compass inside the conscience, the voice of conscience that is showcasing a direction. So, in times like these, where there are pressure, where there is criticism, where your own institution and department is involved, in this time, the moral compass and integrity means not bowing down in any condition whatsoever, especially in difficult times. So, this moral compass, that is your conscience, will showcase the direction on which you should be leading. You have to blend truth with tactics. That means you also have to manage the situation well. You're responsible for it. The truth has to be upheld, but also management has to be done. You have to showcase your competence to understand the objectivity required. But at the same time, you cannot be a mechanical administration. You also have to showcase proper compassion, the need, the willingness, the attitude of wanting to solve the other people's problems. To ensure that faith traditions, that means all these traditions relating to religious places of worship, etc., they continue, but they continue with proper safety, proper public order, and no violation of human dignity. That is something that you will also write in the conclusion. So that's all that we have to do. We have discussed this case study. A Stampede crowd management case study can be very, very likely, and therefore you must do and ponder on this topic a lot more. In case you have more suggestions, please make sure that you use the comment box to let us know. In fact, we can probably do a peer review kind of a concept where you can suggest few things. The other comments can also suggest other suggestions, and we can all learn from that comment section as well. In case you're taking back something informative from these sessions, make sure that you like the video, you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't yet, and definitely comment down below. On that note, allow me to sign off for today. Take care. Bye-bye.